Thank you all again for joining this conversation. We had this really awesome launch around shipping AI, and if you've been reading any of the things we published, some of the videos, it was really meant to be more of a concept or a vehicle to help just usher in what we think is going to happen over the next year, the next couple of years, versus any sort of a specific product or things like that. So as we start to learn what AI and the logistics in the shipping industry looks like, it really is this sense of kind of discovery or mutual learning. So the purpose of this conversation here is I have Jason and Paul. We'll have them introduce themselves in just a second. But the framework is that we believe, especially in kind of new eras like this, people just want to be oriented. They want to know where they are and where they're going. So we're going to have this conversation around what has been the history with these two, as you hear their work histories in data science and so on. What has been your history with data science to ML to AI and so on across your career, so bring us to where we are right now? And then what do you think is going to be the future coming 1 month, 1 year, 5 years from now, and the topic of AI and things like that? So let's start with some background, some intro. Jason, why don't you go first? Share a lot of folks.
Jason Murray, CEO, co-founder of Shipping. Spent 20 years at Amazon before that. My kind of big accomplishment there was creating the supply chain optimization tech space there, which really kind of happened around the time Prime was taking off, and we were really mixing. Machine learning was also starting to become a bigger and bigger deal, so I really think of it as mixing the use of machine learning with the supply chain space and using that as a tool at Amazon to save a bunch of money as Prime ramped up over the 2010s. So that's my background.
How will you, Paul?
Yeah, Wall Street. I'm a logistics data science guy, like 25 years or so. I snuck in. I worked at a Home Depot store actually putting boxes away, and was like, man, why do we keep running out of stuff? So I sent some corporate people some probably, I don't know, questionable emails. I should probably pull it back up and see, but I tricked somebody and got a job at the corporate office at Home Depot and worked there for 7 years doing data engineering and data science work, and then got a job at Amazon. Probably stalked Jason while he was there, sneaking in the back of rooms, shaving my beard on and off, and wearing different glasses so you didn't know who I was. So I was there about 10 years, kind of a little bit everywhere, and then I spent 3 or 4 years at Shopify, helping build out the Shopify fulfillment network.
You skipped the, you did the work on during the pandemic. You did all the labor work, right?
Yeah.
And that landed you in the New York Times.
I got a chill job at Amazon. My last job was supposed to be my sabbatical. I worked in HR, data science, and then COVID happened, and then I ended up getting in the New York Times.
Yeah.
The executive was my title in the New York Times.
Free for you.
Yeah, that's good times.
So Shopify
And then now currently I'm at Coupon, which is like a
Yeah.
Korean Amazon company.
which is why I'm going to start, I think, the conversation with you, is that you had a lot of different perspectives and organizations and structures and things to work in over a pretty storied career.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is the most interesting trend or through line that you've seen in terms of the compounding nature of data science and ML and AI across all these work that is kind of brought us to where we are right now?
Yeah, I'll do the supply chain angle. Is supply chain was always like a cost center kind of knuckle dragging type activity.
Yeah.
Where we got to get it from here to there, and I think the kind of cost and the data science behind that, and like actually getting data, is really driven where it's not just a cost center. It's like Amazon kind of paved the way to make it like that's the value proposition now. Is the speed, the cost, to get the convenience. Connecting all those data points has really changed. I'm just remembering, like, one of my first jobs at Home Depot, I was writing stuff from faxes. Like, it was definitely like oh yeah, just make it happen, use this old 80s technology. So it's definitely probably the biggest change.
What would you say are the biggest like milestones? Like, if you were to say that the top 2 or 3 things were like, this was a watershed moment, and maybe I'm kind of working in backwards.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting to me. It's very clear that an LLM-based, chat-based interface was this like watershed moment to just AI, kind of being everywhere. But if you build towards that, 'cause that doesn't just happen. Like, if you build towards that, in your career at Home Depot, at Amazon, Shopify, or Coupang, like, what are the top 2 or so biggest watershed moments that you saw, the stepwise impact to get us where we are?
Like my mental model first goes to the shipping container, but I won't go that. That's
No,
too far
we're not
back.
going
That's
back
too
there.
far back.
The
And then the
Bill Gates
barcode, that was a
yeah,
great
yeah,
technology
no.
that came out. I think it's really the like digitizing it. A lot of the supply chain stuff is this old tech and old ideas. Like one of the most common things is the news vendor problem, which is like newspaper buying problem from a long time ago, and now it's being applied at scale, like real time. Those types of things are really interesting. I think the physical world movement stuff is really interesting to me. But the, I don't know if I've got an exact answer, but like I remember the first time I used ChatGPT at Shopify, one of my employees like, hey, you gotta check this thing out. We're writing product descriptions because customers without product descriptions can't sell stuff. So we have this model that now writes it for them. And then they showed me what it wrote, and I was just like, oh my God, this is the worst.
Yeah.
This is terrible. And they're like, it doesn't matter what it says just says something, and now customers buy stuff. And you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. I know that was a really eye-opening. I was just like, hey, this is a tool that isn't always discrete answer perfect, but it serves a purpose and gets us closer to an answer. And so I think my career has always been, there's some very precise answer that's correct. And in the moments where LLMs have been kind of taken advantage of is where your answer doesn't have to be perfectly correct.
Yeah, certainly.
And so it's opened my mind to like, where are those moments actually? And maybe don't trick myself into
Right.
thinking that everything is very precise.
Really the switch to like probabilistic natures across everything, versus the precision and that fitting in. And so Jason, you were at Amazon for 19 years. So when was the first time that you saw at Amazon where data science was truly having an impact, or like, this is going to be a really big deal for this company, you mentioned for the world, whatever scale, grand scale you might want, but like you saw at Amazon where data science was going to have the first biggest impact?
I think that a lot of this stuff you kind of knew early on. Like I remember I had this professor in school, and he was like, "Man, if the computers were more powerful, this would be a lot easier." Right? I could just run this I could just try all these things and then figure it out. And I think a lot of what you struggle with is supply chain has this really rich history of there's operations research has been around forever, and kind of the concepts required. Paul mentioned the newsboy problem, right, et cetera. But there's like these things that everyone kind of knew you could solve them in a optimal way, right? Like you could find an optimization that would solve these things, but you either didn't have access to the data points to be able to make these decisions, right? Just think about something simple like at a store, you don't really know if someone goes to the store and buys something, you don't know what they didn't buy, right? You don't know that they looked at a slot on a shelf and the item wasn't there, right? It was like a, they as far as you know, they just come out of the store, they purchase a bunch of stuff. Even that was hard to collect several years ago. But I mean, for me, the thing that it started to occur to me when we were doing, when we were kind of understanding, oh, people went to these pages, they didn't buy something, and then I can start to like build forecasts around the fact that I know what they're trying to buy, and they didn't buy it, and why not, right? And like start to build these at the time simple models, right? But
Yeah.
again, it's like about availability of data to actually make these concepts that have existed forever a reality, and data and compute and all the other stuff. And I think even the latest iterations, the LLMs and whatnot, they're kind of that. I mean, I think you could, I obviously, like it was hard to see back 5 years ago, but you think about it, you're like, God, if you really could just try every English language combination on the internet, you're probably going to get something really interesting out of that.
Yeah.
But it's just so much data and so much compute that it's hard to get your head around what it is. And I think a lot of these concepts, they've lived for a while, but it's more about like they become possible because of the data. And I think with Amazon, we were always through the 2000s like struggling with, do you have each of these individual events? Do you have each of these pieces? And then how do you actually translate that to a decision? Because it was just so hard because the computers weren't fast enough. You didn't have enough compute. You didn't have enough storage. You were dealing with all these things. But as that kind of started to open up, and then the science formalized, it became very clear. This is as opposed to having a billion rules, it's just so much easier to run, use these machine learning techniques to actually make decisions off of it.
So I kind of think of it as these very distinct eras where it was about digitization and data and kind of the compute associated to it that then unlocked modeling. And you always explain to me that one of the biggest level ups in the era at Amazon was when you could start to really model the realities around you. And as soon as you could turn reality into a math problem that could just be solved with some sort of computation of math, that unlocked all these optimizations. And then it's just the compute of how many different models and things like that. And then it's like AI. So there's data and compute, and then models, and then AI. Let's focus on models for a second, because I actually feel like there's this point in the zeitgeist where people have kind of like jumped over models as like the actual core key ingredient to try to do all of this stuff, as they've just gotten to the actual interface of chatting and things like that. So in whether it was at Shopify or whether it was at Amazon, maybe Paul, we can start with you, but like what was kind of the biggest moment where you saw that shift from the data's there now, the digitization is there now, and the compute, because of cloud and everything else, is there now to scale up, down, left, right, that you could now see models actually being created that were making a big difference of interpreting reality. If you say Shopify logistics,
have me go
I'm gonna
first.
laugh. So yeah.
Yeah, I just went good to go.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to the last question. I have a good one now.
Do it. Yes,
No.
please. Yeah.
No, I remember when I was interviewing at Amazon, and I was thinking, I was in physical retail at Home Depot, and then I saw like, well, you can pool risk across a whole bunch of customers and areas and do these logistics warehouses,
Yeah.
fulfillment centers. And I was used to solving the store problem. It was like this unlock for me. I'm like, oh, okay. Because at the time, Amazon, Jason probably knows better, but maybe wasn't making money. I remember hearing that from when I had left Home Depot to go to Amazon. All my peers were like, why would you go to that little tech company who can't make any money?
Yeah.
And when I heard the problem moved from, I have to get stuff to this local store in front of a customer and you don't know who bought it, to I know lots of information, and this warehouse could ship a little bit out of its region to cover inventory problems. It seemed like definitely going to happen. Like that was an eye-opening moment where I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a good business." I think your other question, are you specifically wanting LLM type stuff, or are you thinking?
Well, look, if I give you an example, I was surprised when Jason gave a lot of history of Amazon to me as a non-Amazonian, how early the time of transit models actually started to take shape. But it really wasn't until the compute got to the point with the amount of data coming in that it could actually have an impact by having the right kind of accuracy. And that's sort of like, I've always been intrigued as kind of somebody who wants to understand the history of how we get to where we are now and what AI can do in the future. I'm always intrigued by like, what was the era that brought us to the ability to like see that a large language model could actually have an impact and things like that. And it really does seem like, well, you can make an objective function around time and transit be a thing that happens. You can make an objective function around.
I think it started.
Yeah.
I think it started taking off when when kind of Facebook joined the game, Google joined the game. The machine learning was being used for advertising optimization, et cetera. And so then the tooling became available, the training. I don't think it was probably till like 2010 or something before people were like graduating in data science, right? So that you had talent coming online, you had large amounts of data, which we talked about. You had tools that could help you do this, and they were rough at the time, right? It was like there was a lot of. It was very difficult to get the data normalized to some form to be able to do it, but all that stuff was building around the industry, the macro environment of people who were using. Machine learning was kind of integrating itself into everything, right? So until that happened, it was just difficult to kind of accomplish anything without this massive amount of work. So that was around 2008, I think.
Okay.
9 is my memory. I don't know, but that's when it started to kind of become commonplace. And then over the last 10 years, it's obviously gotten easier and easier. And I still don't think the on that side of things, we haven't found like the LLMs are not like a huge unlock for that, other than maybe the how you visualize it or the import of unstructured data. But I don't know if we've found like this just makes what would consider to be like old school machine learning that much easier. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I try to keep up with that, but it's not clear.
So if we switch to then AI, right, like on this curve, and then we'll kind of put a flag in the sand and talk about the future, right? So if we finish this out by just explaining the lineage to data and compute to modeling and interpreting reality to then whatever is AI, because we're clearly in this world now where everybody talks about it, it's like a thing. Like, when did you see stuff start to tip, whether it was at Amazon or post Amazon out shipping in the last 6 years, probably for you, but for you at Shopify, Coupang, like when did you see this world switch from data science and like machine learning to full blown, like this is actually AI, by what I would define as AI? Like, was it last year, this year, 2021? Like, what was the first story you remember where this felt like true AI?
I think it's more recent. Like I know, like I said, Shopify was a very early adopter. Toby was telling us about how you should be using this model, and I was like, what is this chat something? Like, how's this going to work? Like, it's supposed to predict our demands. What? Like, how does that work? And you really challenged us to at least explore it and see. And he started talking to us about agent-based stuff back then, a couple years ago. But I always felt like, hey, it's giving us so many wrong answers that like it's just a waste of time right now. And then like I think now in the last year, I feel like it's not just common to talk about it or say you're doing it, but actually using it. I've been to some recent conferences and stuff where people are showing the actual value, and it's really been around narrowing down very specific questions and training around solving like a very small problem. And now I can kind of wrap my head around, oh, this one problem gets solved. And then now you can stack that on top of lots of decisions. So it's probably just been like the last 9, 18 months.
Yeah, it seems like it's similar to you, Jason.
Yeah, I think
around
20.
your
I think 25. Everyone was obviously skeptical last year, just in the sense of we've been through technology cycles where it didn't pan out, but the models just keep getting better, and then you start to see real use cases that'll work, and then I think you switch from being focused on what they can't do to what they can do, and when that happens, then it kind of reframes okay, it can't do 100% of what I do, but it will do this 50% thing that it's taking away time from something else, right? So I think that's been the case. I think watching, for me, the big thing was watching the programmers develop it, right? Like, and how for programming it just became more and more effective, and as it improved, it just becomes this clear productivity gain. And then you can. It's very easy for you to imagine like this is going to be applicable to everything, whether it's sales and marketing or operations or coding or every other tool set that you involve, right? So there's just this huge productivity gain. And then you start to think like, okay, well, what does that mean to your product, right? Is, there's people using your product and you need to interact with your product. How would you bring this to the forefront of what's happening there, right? So I think it's become very clear that it's going to be integrated into everything in my mind.
So I'll kind of give an anecdote or story to let you guys kind of prep or think, but I would love to start to now talk about what you think the future of this stuff looks like in the supply chain the next month, the next year, the next 5 years. I would say from a shipping perspective, what's really interesting in our journey in 2025 is just how much that bit flipped for us this year. Where I think we were properly skeptical that I would almost relate it mostly to the quality of the models, right? Specifically at LLM models, like they just really were not that mature yet. That in a supply chain setting, I mean, it's almost to the point where Gen AI is almost like played out to a point too. Like we even talked about Gen AI as a thing, as the explicit use of AI, right? And so it was so difficult to see how AI was going to allow some sort of like, dynamic replanning of somebody's order across multiple warehouses or things like that. I think one of the more interesting stories is how you start to use AI to allow the supply chain to evaluate in real time all of these criteria or factors that come in, like inventory or whatever the case may be. But when you really dug into it by the end of 2024, it was still this world where like, well, you still got to integrate all this stuff, right? You're still trying to get EDI things for goodness sake. So we just were never really sure exactly the practicality. We saw no real scale of true AI outside of modeling and efficiency and optimization. And then it was like, I think it was like '04, like the ChatGPT model. I'm trying to remember the specific one. But once the models got good enough, we started to realize what LLMs could actually do as almost like between a general intelligence layer to some sort of a integration bus to different types of data sets or whatever. Like the future now seemed inevitable. Like the phrase that we used in the most recent article was this droplet through a valley. It's inevitable that this droplet is going to hit the bottom of the river at the bottom of the valley. But the path that droplet takes and how long it's going to take is very unknown. We're going to kind of like figure that out as a journey together. But it became very clear, I think, by summer that this droplet is inevitable. And so now it's like get out in front of that and try to figure out what that means and try to have a shared vocabulary. And that's been the real like metaphor, the real transformation for us as a business to figure this out within shipping AI. So we do think there's a future. Like we do think that this is going to actually have an impact in different use cases, in different systems, different business models, different geographies. So I'll start with you, Jason. Like, what do you think is the most interesting or compelling feature or trend you can see AI happening in the shipping side?
I just think the potential for automation is just so high, right? I mean, in terms of, you think about all the zillions of things that have to happen to run a supply chain. I mean, this is kind of like short to medium term future, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's all of these tasks involved in running a supply chain. I just think you start placing this thing and the amount of these kind of busy work type things that have to happen to make everything go, and this coordination and the flow of information. There's just so much possibility in that all being automated, right? And I mean, that's automation's kind of the big framework that I look at it through. But all of these things that you wish you could do, but you don't have enough time, you don't have enough analysts, you don't have enough people, this is stuff that all could be running on your behalf, right? And I think that's probably the most interesting thing. I mean, you kind of like look at a small supply chain group at a small company, they now are going to have the like horsepower to be able to do these very deep analysis that was previously only reserved for Amazon or Walmart or someone who's really big. And so I think we're very, that's very intriguing. As far as that's how I think about it, is I just think that so much of the stuff is going to get knocked out that we previously just have had humans grinding through over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. How do you call?
Yeah, similar. Like I think the best builders, like scientists, engineers, are close to operations, they're close to customer, close to products. They're knowing the information, and these tools are making them really efficient at coding, but that's maybe 10-30% of their time. So I think for developers, we'll see kind of a short run of increased capabilities. I think the capabilities are going to be on the other side, the customers themselves, the product operators, the product people are now going to be developing on their own. And I think initially it's going to be really crappy code. Like I saw some quote, I think from some MIT article saying like, we're in the biggest tech debt era because AI is just generating infinite amounts of bad code that people are developing.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming Gemini 5 and ChatGPT 7 are going to come back and fix all the bad code it made.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed that happens. But I think that's where we're going to see the operator is going to be writing their own custom jobs, they have a SQL assistant, they have a data science assistant now,
Yeah.
and that these skills that they would have to explain it to somebody with a PhD now is not there. And so I think we'll see a lot of innovation on that side. I think you'll see a lot of product people building their own tool from scratch,
Yeah.
just using English instead of having to learn the code.
There's so many different funny jokes that encapsulate that exact story you said. Like there's the famous New Yorker cartoon where there's somebody in one half of the cartoon that he's saying, I use AI to summarize this long paper into 3 bullet points. And then on the other side, this person goes, I'm using AI to extrapolate these 3 bullet points into as much content and depth as I can possibly get, right? There's that story. Another one is a friend of mine helps run one of the biggest consultancies on the security and compliance side for SOC 2 audits, et cetera. So with Vanta, et cetera. So doing like a Netflix SOC 2 audit or whatever. He told me that the amount of security questionnaires coming up is like 100x the amount of questions within the last year. And his theory is that all these CISOs are now just using AI to basically cover every single possible question that could exist. And so now they're just using AI to answer all of the security questions. It's like just this insane arms race, and there's kind of seeing that everywhere with like code and all that.
Yeah, I've seen some companies I'm working with last year we worked with them and it would have been a spreadsheet. Like
Yeah.
SOX compliant spreadsheet you need to fill out. Now it's a custom app,
Yeah.
which I'm
Yeah.
assuming is
They made it lovable or something.
somebody just said, hey, take this spreadsheet
Yeah.
to some website. And then
I think it's, so maybe like a lightning round, some like score the time. I'm gonna give you guys an idea and you tell me like how far away this is, right? So the first one is supply chain has a lot about interoperability between systems, right? So you're never gonna have one system for everything. You have a WMS, a TMS, et cetera. So let's assume we use LLMs to do mapping for integration between one system to the other where it just works, right? Things like that. How far away do we think that is? A year? 10 years, a month? Just have LLMs map the way in which
It's
systems
impossible.
integrate. It's
Integrations will
impossible.
never be easy.
Integrations must be
Supply
easy.
chain integrations
Yeah.
will always be terrible.
Yeah,
That'll be the problem they get stuck on.
tip from the side. I've heard this use case a lot though. Like
Yeah.
LLMs are a mapping boom, right? And if integrations are largely mapping, do you see the future in the supply chain where like
I think it's probably already
Connectivity,
happening in
yeah.
some way.
Yeah.
So there's already like a lot of that. Those processes are probably improving substantially.
now what about agents? Okay, we're pretty bearish on agents to be honest. There's like a thing inside of supply chains happening within a month, but we think that they're going to happen in the future. So let me give an example of let's say we have like you have a pharmaceutical business that is shipping medicine on dry ice, and the dry ice expires in 62 hours. And let's assume that it's got to get to Mac's house in that time frame. And when that shipment is shipped, there's an agent that's threaded off that can then monitor that shipment, and it can use AI to more earlier in the process of shipping, more accurately determine whether or not that shipment is going to be late. And in observing that, immediately thread off an order to the order management system within that pharmaceutical business to make a second order of that shipment and inform an upgrade to a higher level service to be able to make sure that that second shipment gets there in that time of 62 hours when Mac needs that. That kind of like agentic workflow, how far away do you think we
I don't know Paul's answer.
are?
Yeah, I don't know why. Not now. Like,
Yeah.
I think really it's this data flow question. But I think what you described, I think the big change in my mindset in the last year is just getting smaller and smaller agents.
Mhm.
Like working, ideally, a business person who has this problem and monitors these orders would be able to build their own agent to do it. Just say, hey,
Yeah.
email me or text me or when you see something happen. and only answer this one question you just had. You had a very detailed example.
Yeah.
I think the harder ones are when you're like, explore all of my problems and tell me what I should do next. Like, I
Yeah.
think those are the,
How do we make my supply chain more efficient?
yeah, that's going to be some generic 3 bullets that maybe are harder to deal with. But I think when you can be precise, I think some of the examples I've seen, you just say, you must say yes or no at the end of your prompt.
Oh,
And those types of things where it's just like, don't write me a novel. Like if you ask ChatGPT something like you just described, it would probably just reply, the customer will likely see their order at some period of time, but you don't really want that. You want to know yes or no.
yeah.
Should I do something or not? And I think that's just kind of prompt engineering. I think the other big change in my mindset is for this question is I think people originally thought it had to be an engineer or a scientist. Again, back to this is a business question. Like once you start getting into prompt engineering, I don't know why it's called engineering, but writing in English to a system.
Yeah,
The silverware
language.
maintenance engineer.
Yeah, like you gotta, it becomes a very kind of, seems like obvious that it'll already be there. It's just the pipes.
Well, I think if you think about the challenges of that particular question, I think the issue is, the fear is that it's going to misinterpret something and then kind of go crazy on the other side, right? And so that's like order a bunch of things didn't need to happen. So I think that's why we have a lot of human in the loop stuff right now, which is
Like
basically,
policy engine thing.
well, just do you look? I noticed this. I think that's
Yeah,
all possible
send
today.
a message
Do you
to-
mind? Do
Yeah.
you think I should reorder this? And I think that's all possible now. And so to me, it's a function of like, when does the accuracy level? When's the marginal point where the accuracy level of these types of processes is high enough that it outweighs the need to have that human, right? And I think that's kind of where we are in evaluating these situations. That's why I'm pretty big on this notion of like everything is kind of, at the moment, it's all about make sure someone's looking at that. Even in the coding paradigm, right? People, it's generate me some code and then I'm ultimately responsible for what I'm checking into the repository.
Yeah.
And those are the use cases that seem to be working. I think these agent models where it's informing you or telling you about something so that you can decide to take action or okay it, that's all now, right? That's fine. I think the only impediment in my mind is just no one wants the like, oh, you now Mac has 7,000 packages going to his house because we can think through
Yeah.
this thing. You can
A lot of dry ice and
there's
Macs.
another agent that like checks that also, but
Yeah.
it's like that, and maybe that's the answer. But I don't think we're not fully there yet on these like redundancy frameworks to be able to deal with it the same way that people are used to just programs. Traditional software either works or doesn't.
Yeah.
You test around it, tolerances, all that stuff, right? So I think that's kind of, we're in that tweener stage. But I think as it becomes, if there's no consequence, people are able to use agents quite a bit. But if there's no consequence, there's usually not a lot of value. So
All right, last question, and then people could chat with us if you weren't bored out of your mind with this. Last question is, what's the best resource lately that you've kind of come across that you would want to recommend or share with people on supply chain, data science, ML, AI, all this kind of stuff? And you can't say the new Shipping AI newsletter that Jason and I are reading.
yeah.
So you can't say
Am I
that.
allowed to say that?
Yeah, you're allowed to say that if you want, but it
Newsletter.
could be an author, it could be a podcast, it could be a book, it could be a friend who you recommend checking out the following. What's the most interesting resource that you want to recommend, folks?
Maybe a little nerdy for the audience, but I
Please do it.
usually go to Amazon Science websites and they have
Okay.
articles that they're publishing, and I will read through them. Or I don't read through them and I pass them to a chatbot to turn it into a podcast I listen to or something.
Nice.
I think I use LM Notebook
Yeah,
to compile multiple sources of things that I'm interested in.
yeah.
That's the other pro tip I have.
I think the most interesting thing around me right now is the consumer view, which is how much my kids use it and how they use it. And then it takes me a little while to get unstuck on how much you can actually use these things. I mean, one of my daughters, it's basically just running her life, right? Like it does everything runs through this thing, but it opens up your mind in terms of like, wow, I never even thought about asking him a question or having this discussion or going through this thing. And I think it gives you another like glimpse into the future of, okay, this is incredibly
Yeah.
potent over time, right? As this stuff gets better and better. But I'm amazed at and they use the voice mode, so it's even more ridiculous, but it's like the back and forth on the thing, but it's just the amount of, like, I think you have to be a little bit exposed to it before you really can totally understand
Yeah.
how it happens. I think I enjoy watching developers use it. I enjoy like watching my kids use it, right? And it gives you kind of a window into where this is all going.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you all for hanging out and listening. This was a good initial first chat, trying to get through it. We'd love to chat with you when we're done. Thank you, Jeff, for recording. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.